This is Out of Bounds.
This is Out of Bounds, your home for the wacky, the weird, the wild, and the wide world of sports. Thus, all of my lovely hand gestures and props. Mia O'Brien alongside the illustrious John Alba. John, how are you doing? Are you feeling confident with your decision to have me open the show now?
Illustrious. I don't know about illustrious, but I'll do my best to live up to that. It's a good Monday. Got some rays today, and now we are back at it on Out of Bounds, my favorite Monday evening happy hour here on the Know Your News Network. I'm sure you were out there. Let's just get the Jaguars reference out of the way since we have to cue the bingo card up. I'm sure you were out there at Jaguars practice today, weren't you?
Yes, I was. Actually, practice was moved to 3 o'clock today. The heat of the day, we had a heat index of 107. Ton of fun, John. Ton of fun. I spoke with some staffers today who've been on the staff since the Jaguars' inception in 1995, and they have agreed that they've never seen heat indices quite like we are seeing of late. However, optimism, although I know some of our Know Your News Out of Bounds listeners, viewers, are from this neck of the woods. Apparently, the heat that was outside of Jerry World on Saturday was the worst that those same staffers said they had ever felt outside of a football stadium. Thankfully, Jerry World is indoors, so that helps. But yes, 107 in Dallas at the time of kickoff at 5 o'clock on Saturday.
Yikes. Yep, that's why you put a roof over the building. That's pretty simple and straightforward. A good weekend it was, a busy weekend it was in the sports world as we round third, head home for the beginning of the football season. We will have some football to talk about here on this edition of Know Your News. We have a lot of things to talk about, and we want to hear your thoughts. Head on over to kynchat.com. Leave us those super chats, or if you're watching via YouTube, you can just drop it right there, and that's how you guarantee that your comment will be read on air. Sometimes we'll pick some comments and throw them up anyway, but the way to guarantee that you will get your comment, your question, your concern read on air is by leaving us those super chats. We would love to have them. What you got beverage-wise here today, Mia?
Beverage-wise, I'm rocking with some nice 100-calorie Nutrell, one of those seltzers.
Interesting.
Yeah, was up in Charleston this weekend. So had a wide variety of cocktails and wines. And so we're still going to celebrate a lovely Monday on Out of Bounds, but, just keeping 100 calories.
I'll tell you, I had a crazy week of eating and drinking. So the fair in this county was this past week.
Oh, the fair.
And I shot a Guy Fieri Triple D style project. And so here I am going about gallivanting booth to booth, trying foods.
Are we allowed to say who this outlet is, which outlet this is for?
They'll see. But I'm out there shooting this stuff, and oh my goodness, I was like, I got my chronic acid reflux as is. So I'm eating barbecue. I'm eating lobster rolls. I ate what's it called? I ate a crepe. I had a brownie waffle with cannoli cream.
For you, this is a big deal given your esophageal issues.
Right. So it was a lot, and I felt like I needed to cleanse, but then Out of Bounds was approaching, and I was in Wawa. And I saw a little Wawa half and half, and I said, I think I've got some vodka at home. So I poured some vodka in this, shook it up a bit, and here we are. And I've got a toast, a very important toast, because we learned today via TMZ that Ashley Olsen of the famous Mary-Kate and Ashley duet had her first child, Otto. So, to the iconic MKA.
Is his middle name Graham?
I don't know what his middle name is. To the iconic MKA duo, a cheers. Salud, congratulations.
For the Out of Bounds listeners that aren't as familiar, John Alba could literally make a documentary and autobiography of the Olsen twins.
I can rank the Olsen twin movies if anyone would like, but that's a conversation for another edition of Out of Bounds. Instead, Mia, we begin this week's episode by taking a trip over to Philadelphia, do we not?
On the hardwood, where James Harden is at it again, folks. He is crazy. 2 days after it was reported that the 76ers had ended trade talks involving James Harden, the 10-time All-Star ripped 76ers president Daryl Morey, saying in part, Daryl Morey is a liar and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. Harden said this during, wait for it, an Adidas media event in China. He went on to say, quote, "Let me say it again." See, it wasn't a misprint. Let me say it again. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he is a part of. John, who in their right mind would take a shot on James Harden at this point?
And then keep in mind, for those lacking the context, Daryl Morey was with Harden in Houston prior to having him in Philadelphia. How could you take a shot on James Harden? How? I mean, you could take a shot on him if it's not going to cost you much. But at this juncture, what team in their right mind would trade for this guy and give up valuable assets? Consistently, he has shown place in and place out that it is the James Harden show, and everything else that happens around him need matter not. It's a shame because he really will go down as one of the more talented playmakers of his era. But Mia, in a league full of superstars and all about meism, and there's a lot of it in the NBA, I can't think of an example of someone that has tried to earn the right or claim to have the right to choose their own destiny without backing it up with results in the way that James Harden has. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I just want to know, like, is he going to play for the 76ers now? Like, does he hold out? Like,
a little awkward, don't you think?
Daryl Morey, but Daryl Morey also claims that, they're in the window. They got to win now. Joel Embiid is at his peak. You do have a 10-time All-Star sitting there. And while certainly his play on the court, has been criticized because is he a ball hog or not? Does the ball always have to be in his hands? You can do with that information what you will. But the reality is it's all hands on deck in Philadelphia right now. They need James Harden if he's on the roster.
You can't be all in if you have a guy like that.
Well, then what are the 76ers? Are they not in their window?
I'm not saying they're not in their window. I mean, we've seen results-wise, they very much are in their window. We've seen them compete. And, they make the head coaching change now, so we'll see what happens there. But they are sporting one of the most talented big men in the history of the game in Joel Embiid. And in order to succeed in this league, we've talked about it. You can have a great big man, but you need shooters. And James Harden is supposed to fill that. He's supposed to be the playmaker for this team. I don't understand. Literally, I'm speechless. I don't understand what standing he believes he has to be able to try and direct his own shot here. The report was he wants to go to the Clippers and head west to LA and play with Kawhi and Paul George and Russell Westbrook in a team.
Another AARP team resembling the other Los Angeles squad across town.
Right? When you see what happened with Houston, when you see what happened with Brooklyn, when you see what's happening now with Philadelphia, what team in their right mind would want to take a shot on this? In giving up assets.
Maybe those two teams in Los Angeles.
What assets are you giving up? It sounds like the Sixers had a hard time even finding a trade partner.
What's the going price for him at this point? Because the 76ers probably want him out of town.
But you have to get a return. He's still a talented player.
We'll take a bag of peanuts and maybe,
No. He's still a talented player.
Well, but if he's a cancer in the locker room, don't you want to just get rid of him?
I still think you need to value getting some quality return. You don't just give him away for free. Yeah, the thing with the Nets situation was, look, the Nets went all in. They gave up a very talented future star in this league in Jared Allen to bring in James Harden, and they got burned by it. They absolutely did. But in trading him back to the Sixers, even if they did take on Ben Simmons, who hasn't panned out the way they were hoping, they still got valuable draft capital back. And that was significant for them. They were able to recover the draft picks that they lost in trading for James Harden. So I think if the Sixers were to try and find a trade partner, they have to recover something. I just can't get over this guy has proven time in and time out he doesn't deliver when it matters. He's a great regular season player when he cares. And I'm not the type of guy, you know this historically, I'm not the type of guy to crap all over a player. I really am not. I'm a very pro-player guy. What has this dude proven at this juncture in his career to earn the right to call his shot on where he wants to go?
Over the last, I'm looking at the numbers too, by the way. James Harden has plateaued essentially at 21.5 points over the last 4 seasons per game. Of course, his career highs of 30, 36, and 34 points per game wait for it, with the Houston Rockets with Daryl Morey as the chief executive. LOL. His 3-point percentage did go up a season ago, so there's that. Went up a tick from 32.6% to 38.
Joel Embiid in there on the inside, drawing all the attention. He kicks
right.
it
So
out,
maybe they figure. Again, to your point, when you asked, the question was, who could a potential trade partner be for the Philadelphia 76ers if they were to turn face and say, all right, now we got to get rid of this guy? We are seeing the NBA shift so much more towards building within, not having to go out and pay 3-4 marquee free agent stars and build a super team. You are seeing you draft 1 to 2. Maybe it's your number 1 and your number 3, and then you go out and you get your number 2, who even then is in the prime of their career, whereas James Harden is clearly on the back end, unless you are the Los Angeles Lakers or the Los Angeles Clippers. And so that's why that's the only logical spot for me. Because I just don't see another team. Like, I mean, if he goes back to Houston, right? Houston, rebuilding, young team. You look at some of the, up and coming squads in the NBA, like / the younger vibes that are like reloading. Milwaukee, Miami, Denver. Those teams are already put together. And even with the pieces they're adding, it's guys like Dame Lillard, who, obviously, he's not that far off in terms of age from James Harden because he's 33 and James Harden is, around the same age. But the reality is that Dame at least would fit that system. James Harden doesn't fit any system outside of the let's take all the old aging stars and see what they can do together.
It's just as simple. I think you're overcomplicating it, Mia. It's as simple as this. He has proven he doesn't care about team culture. He has proven he is in this for himself, which, look, he reserves the right. But look at the decrease in value you cause in yourself when you play that way and when you act that way.
I mean, wasn't that what Russell Westbrook was, though?
And look how Russell Westbrook is adjusted.
And look where Russell Westbrook is.
But look how he adjusted. He took on that role with the Clippers. There is a path to sustainability in the NBA, and it was paved by Vince Carter. Okay? Vince Carter recognized the only way that I'm going to be able to sustain my career around 2010, 2011 was if I acknowledge I'm no longer the prime superstar and I find how can I fit a role on the team that I'm on. And he discovered that, and he added a good 5-6 years to his career. Carmelo Anthony did the same thing. Carmelo Anthony, it was I'm the star, I'm the star, I'm the star. And then he realized, actually, you know what? If I take on another role, I'll have sustainability. And he did. James Harden, I think, is still more talented than those guys were at this point in their careers. But the attitude and the all-about-me-isms, they have supplemented that downfall. And I just don't think any team out there would be in the right state of mind to give up anything considered to be legitimate capital to acquire James Harden.
You're not wrong, but also
unless you're running promotions.
But then if nobody's going to come up with the money, what's going to happen in Philly?
I don't know. And that's the thing. It's going to be a little bit of awkward camp, huh? Don't you think? I hate that guy. I'm not playing for him. He's a liar. He's a cheat.
How many practices do you think Daryl Morey is at?
I think he should be at all of them, and he should watch him like a hawk. You should watch him like a hawk. Listen, again, I'm very pro player. I really am. It takes a lot for me to turn against a player. I've totally turned against James Harden. Totally have turned against him. I did the same with Kyrie Irving, too.
That you really did. That one you really did.
I was always like, Kyrie Irving's a misunderstood soul and he just needs to be in the right situation. Nope. When people show you who they are, believe them. And I think James Harden is very much an example of that, Mia. Let's keep rolling here with the association. Look at your boy Dirk there.
I love Dirk. Talk about a team player, a guy who like recognized he still was good. But to your point about Vince Carter, when Luka Doncic came along, he said, I will be the mentor, and I am A-okay with that.
This past weekend, Tony Parker, Dirk Nowitzki, Pau Gasol, Dwayne Wade enshrined in the Naismith Pro Basketball Hall of Fame. What a class, huh? Talk about heavy hitters, stars of their era.
Not to mention Becky Hammon, too.
Becky Hammon as well. But it got me thinking, Mia, oh man, these were the people that I grew up watching in the prime of my fandom. I think that means I'm old. So I ask you, what was the first athlete retirement or Hall of Fame induction that made you realize that you too are old as well?
I would have to say the retirement of our Lord and Savior Alexander
Alex
Emmanuel
Rodriguez, that's the one
Rodriguez.
that got you?
Also because it was just like such a fall from grace because not well, I take that back. The fall from grace was 2 years earlier. My bad. 3 years actually. But it just felt like John because he had this resurgence when he came back from his year-long suspension. He actually cobbled something together in 2015 on a middle of the road Yankee squad. And then obviously everything went to crap in 2016. And Brian Cashman, to his credit, unlike this year, we'll get to that in a second, actually said, you know what? Let's tear it down, make some changes. You're out, you're in, bring this kid up. Which he's not doing this year, but again, we're going to get to that. And I just remember, I know A-Rod, obviously he was like batting like the Mendoza line for the previous 3 weeks. And I don't know what the conversation was. I know I was going through a rough patch in my own life around that same time. I also was in the process of switching apartments. And I remember I had to stay in a hotel for like 3 days. And I'm like in this hotel room, like, what am I doing with my life? As I'm watching A-Rod be forced into retirement and a like fake ceremony at Yankee Stadium. And I'm like, what is going on? Like what are we doing? So yeah, so that one, that's the one when I look back at like retirements that I'm just like, damn, like, why couldn't you? I mean, I know they tried to be as tasteful as possible for a man who served one of the longest suspensions for steroids that we've seen across professional sports.
Not one of the longest.
The longest, yeah, you know. But still, like, it just was so unceremonious, even though there was a ceremony. And like that for me was just a tough pill to swallow, regardless of what he did, and whether or not he deserves to be a Hall of Famer.
Interesting.
I also would like to note too, on a little bit lighter note, that just the reality that like half of the Blue Jays roster are the sons of players
basically, yeah,
that we followed. And my boyfriend keeps bringing up Matt Holliday's kid, who was the number 1 overall pick a few years ago. And he's 19 and he's engaged already. And like, he's probably going to be in the majors next year. That's another weird one for me.
Even
so
Al Leiter's kid, Jack Leiter.
Yeah. Played at Vanderbilt with my cousin's best friend, which is like wacky. For me, it's not even the Hall of Fame speeches as it is seeing the players' kids now being the stars. That's what gets me.
I would say for me personally, the first one that really jumps to my head as, oh, okay, I'm getting old now, was Mariano Rivera and retiring, just because I can't think of a more consistent athlete in my time watching sports. Mariano Rivera was a guarantee. And I know that's something that a lot of people say. They're like, oh, this guy was guaranteed. This guy's a guarantee. No, like Mariano Rivera was legitimately a guarantee. If he came into the game, 98.5% of the time, it was done right there on the spot. He was blessed with this cutter that nobody else could catch, and he wrote it to a unanimous Hall of Fame induction. So his retirement in 2013, 10 years ago, I was 20 years old. You were 20 years old. That to me was the first, oh, okay. Now,
but he also had one of like the greatest farewell tours of all time.
He did. He absolutely did.
And so that's where like there reached a couple points, and I know he joked about it after that. Like he was like, "Okay, we get it. I'm not dying. I'm just retiring." And so that, how do you feel about the retirement tour? Because that's another part of it. Like
they warrant it. If they
A-Rod didn't get a retirement tour, so maybe
he wasn't getting a retirement tour.
Yeah, but that's why I felt like the rug was pulled from beneath him and his followers.
The guy, his followers. So this guy, and look, I like A-Rod, but this guy, I mean, he disgraced the game. He did. He disgraced the game. And listen, he's the real winner because after everything that he did, he is now back in good graces with everybody, and people love him. And
I mean, that's the funny part is no one wants to talk to Roger Clemens. No one at all wants to talk to Curt Schilling. Those guys at least got to retire gracefully-ish. And then it all went to crap. So what would you rather? Would you rather have a ceremonial, like, oh, like they were so great, and then in your post-retirement life, it comes out you were a cheater or you're just crazy, and your legacy is tarnished? Or forgiveness, the 13 spelled backwards, is actually a thing.
I don't know. I mean, let's not sit here and act like Roger Clemens had this graceful retirement, because he definitely didn't. He was
but when he took the Astros to the World Series, there were people who were like, "Oh my God, look at this! What a great story! Him and Andy Pettitte."
Yeah, and then Brian McNamee happened, and he comes back in 2007 for the Yankees outside George's box, telling the world that he is back, as Susan Waldman would say. And we know that didn't work out too much, and the rumors and everything starts surfacing. So I don't know, man. I think that's just delving into semantics, quite frankly, at that point. I think across other sports with guys retiring that really hit home, and I'd love for our super chatters to let us know, because I'd love to hear some names that you have to say. I'll even say this. Pujols' retirement last year really got me, because I was just like, man.
I mean, but also you looked at it and you're like, how has this not happened yet? I feel like he's been around forever.
Yeah. Vince Carter's a few years ago. That was a big one for me.
Another one that I was like, man, he's been around forever.
Yeah. So make of that what you will. Let us know. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Let's switch over to football, Mia.
Yes. This one is quite fascinating. There's been a lot of twists and turns when it comes to Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. Dak isn't just hearing criticisms delivered every day by fans and analysts every time he throws a pick, and the video is then subsequently shared on social media. Of course, as many have noted, they never show his touchdowns, just his picks. Texas Governor Greg Abbott offered a strong opinion of Prescott during a Friday appearance on Outkick's Don't At Me program. Quote, "I'm a big Cowboys fan. I go to Cowboys games," he told Dan Dockich. LOL. "And there's nothing more I want to see than the Cowboys back in the Super Bowl. Dak is a good quarterback as it concerns stats and things like that. He needs to be able to step up and show he can win a big game." Does Dak deserve, John, to get called out by the governor?
Well, in Texas, the Dallas Cowboys are life, right? They're everything. So they're going to be scrutinized by everyone, including the governor of the state, who probably should have a few other things he should be worried about in the state of Texas, quite frankly. But as far as Dak is concerned, you're the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. America's team, remember? They're America's team. Everyone in America loves the Dallas Cowboys. Haven't you heard? Because that's what I've been told. Everyone loves them, even though they haven't won a Super Bowl.
I was told by their former head coach that even when they're not good, everyone wants to talk about how this is the year and they're so good.
Okay. Well, with that position comes scrutiny. Even if you play well, it's going to happen. It followed Tony Romo. Tony Romo statistically was one of the best quarterbacks of his era, but the criticism was going to follow him because of perennial underachieving when it mattered. So does he deserve to be criticized by the governor of the state? Does he deserve to have all those interception videos shown, as you were alluding to? Maybe not, but it comes with the territory. And that's just the nature of being the face of the franchise of America's team. God bless America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of Jerry World. What say you?
Yeah, it's the nature of being the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. It's just, like you said, it's like being the president. You get treated differently. What I'm trying to find is the back and forth between LaShawn McCoy and Dallas area sports anchor Mike Leslie, because Mike was the one who pointed out that every time he tweets out a Dak interception, it blows up, but then he tweets out this beautiful 4th and goal from the one fade ball to CeeDee Lamb for a touchdown, and not enough people give it credit. And apparently LaShawn McCoy picked a fight with Mike about this, and then he actually showed up at practice in Oxnard, and they went back and forth. And I don't know another franchise in American sports where this would happen. Even the Yankees, hell, even the Jets with Hard Knocks, it's not anywhere near the craziness that you see with the Cowboys, where so here's what it was. So I guess LaShawn McCoy said that Dak Prescott was trash and he didn't like him. And then Mike Leslie basically tweeted at him and was like, well, if you want to talk, trash about him, how about you show up to practice? And then they actually did a one-on-one together, which is just fascinating. And then Emmanuel Acho, of course, drove there to be a part of the craziness of it. Name me another team in professional sports that sort of circus would exist around. Listen, I've been around one that there was a circus. Its name was Urban Meyer, and it was for all the wrong reasons. It doesn't matter who the players are. The characters remain the same. This was happening when Troy Aikman was the quarterback. This was happening when Tony Romo, an unheralded guy, was also the quarterback. I don't know if there's another franchise in American sports, and that includes the Cowboys of Major League Baseball, the New York Yankees, where that sort of thing would happen, that you have national writers and local guys doing bits because it's about this quarterback. Like, I just don't see it in any other sport, any other team. You could say the Lakers all you want, but the reality is that when you look at the era between Kobe and LeBron, that was a wasteland. So that doesn't prove that point.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It comes with the territory. I think Dak has generally handled himself pretty well. But it has become a meme that since he got the big contract, well, he hasn't performed, and LOL interception, LOL injury, LOL interception, LOL injury. And it has, to a degree, shook out that way. But I think a lot of fans hold a grudge against him for wanting a big contract. But guess what? He wasn't the one who signed off on paying himself a big contract. That came from elsewhere. And we're talking about guys who play in the most popular league in America. Maybe the most popular league in the world, you can argue. So if he wants to get paid, well then, damn it, he deserves the right to that. And should he perform to that contract? Of course.
That's why he's getting paid that much money, because you're not just getting paid because it's the going rate for quarterbacks. It's because you're the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
You got to deal with everything else
that carries more weight. Right.
Absolutely.
It's apples and oranges, but another point that I will make is CJ Henderson, former Florida Gator, drafted by the Jags 9th overall, had issues documented at the University of Florida, bipolar, different mental issues that he was, on medication for, seeing a doctor, gets drafted by the Jags, just went sour real fast. It's traded to Carolina at the beginning of his second year. And when he first was interviewed there, he said, yeah, it was just too much pressure, like being in Florida, being a first rounder. And like the joke around here and around the Southeast was you literally played on a team that went 1-16 and you were hurt half the year. Like, what was the pressure? But people are built differently. And that's why not everyone can be the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. If you are, like Dak Prescott has now been for almost a decade, you accept that this comes with the territory.
Let's talk about something that broke.
This was weird. This came out of left field, dude. Lead us in, John.
So that's Michael Orr. Many of you
The Blind Side
probably recognize him from The Blind Side. Famously, the Academy Award-winning film The Blind Side portrayed his upbringing. Sandra Bullock won an Oscar for it. Now he says it was a lie. He alleges that Sean and Leanne Tui, who months after Orr found himself pretty much on the streets, they took him into their home as a high school student. He claims that they actually never adopted him. Instead, less than 3 months after they took him in and turned 18 in 2004, the petition that he filed says the couple tricked him into signing a document making them his conservators.
Where's Britney Spears?
Right, which gave them legal authority to make business deals in his name. As we know, he would be drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, go on to have a good career in the NFL. Mia, is nothing sacred in Hollywood anymore because, boy, howdy, does this sour what on paper seemed like a really good story.
Well, the writers are on strike right now, John.
They are.
I would make a joke about that, but I will refrain. Here's the thing. Michael Orr, I don't have the timeline in front of me, but 3 months after he turned 18. So at that point, he would have already had all these offers, right?
Correct.
So I guess then the question is, at that point, were they banking on, well, he's going to make millions and we want to benefit from that? But if memory serves me, John, and perhaps I'm wrong, didn't he turn 19 his senior year because he actually had been held back a couple of grades?
I believe so.
So that's what I want to see. And this is, Michael Orr may very well be telling the truth. I'm not really sure why it's coming out now in August of 2023. But it's his story. He deserves to tell it. I am just curious the timing of when the offers started pouring in versus when this alleged paperwork that he was duped into took place. Because the reality is that when they, at least according to the movie and the book, when they first adopted him or brought him into their home, he was not a football player. He was simply a kid on the street. They couldn't have predicted. Yes, he certainly had the intangibles of, a large frame and things you can't teach, but they couldn't have predicted that he would turn into what he became. So that's why I need to see that before I completely write off the Tui family. Listen, you can say it's a money grab all you want, but the reality is he had a good enough relationship with them to sign off on the movie because he had to sign off on certain parts of it. Correct me if I'm wrong. They signed off on it. Other people who were there at Briarcrest signed off on, yep, this works. Michael Lewis stepped right into the role of writing the book, and they gave him all the information. And certainly it's a realistic fiction, if you want to call it that, but it's based on a true story. Mm-hmm. But I highly doubt that if it was fabricated, it's just coming out now.
Well, you know who was the high school coach, right?
No.
Hugh Freeze was the high school coach.
Wait!
right? Talk about throwing in a whole bunch of other wrenches into the story, right? Not that there's necessarily any correlation there, but it does make you think, doesn't it?
I'm trying to do the math now. So Michael Orr was at Ole Miss because he was there 2009, 2016. Hugh was still there.
Yeah, and Hugh.
So his whole time, that was when he was in the pros, I should say. So he was in college from 05 to 09.
Yeah, just crazy. But it is a crazy story. And listen, it certainly could hold merit because it wouldn't be the first time that an athlete has been exploited or a young man has been taken advantage of by people. It is pretty crazy that it took this long to come out.
Right. What prompted this?
Maybe Michael Orr feels like he's in a position now in life where he has the leverage to actually put something like this forward, put a petition like this forward. But I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I always felt like the story was a little sketch. Something seemed a bit Hollywood about it.
I mean, the car crash was Hollywood.
Just in general, something seemed a bit Hollywood about it. So having it allegedly turn out to be a case of they were basically riding his success and trying to reap the benefits of that. Keep in mind what his background was. He was young and unassuming. And there certainly could be a situation where someone in that position gets taken advantage of. It's sad regardless of whether it's true or not, because if it's not true, he's alleging this against them. If it is true, then this is what happened to him. And I don't take pride in that, but man, how do you watch that movie ever again? How do you read that book ever again?
I don't know. People seem to love Air, and that's not a true story. The Michael Jordan shoe story. People have been raving about that, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, but did this, Sonny Vaccaro, literally, if you watch any 30 for 30, is a pariah. And while certainly his roots were not that of being, what's her name? Hester Prynne with the red, scarlet letter. His roots weren't that way. So this is his origin story. So I get it. But I'm like, ain't no way that Sonny was the one who was doing this, and this. Like that. No. But the Michael Orr story, I did believe. I do still believe. Because have the Tuies come out with a statement yet?
I haven't seen one publicly.
I haven't either. So I'm very curious, what sparked this / what's Michael Orr been up to too? Nothing against him. I'm not accusing him of anything. But why now? Why come out and say this now?
Guess we'll have to see. How about we stay in the SEC?
Oh boy. Yay! Here he is. What's up, Peyton? Or should I say Professor Peyton? The 5-time NFL MVP and Pro Football Hall of Famer has a new title, Professor Manning. The University of Tennessee, his alma mater, announced Monday that he has been appointed a professor of practice at the College of Communication and Information starting this fall. Now, he did graduate from Tennessee, John, with a degree in speech communication. So it's not like Peyton's not qualified, especially when you look at the media empire that he's built. Who is one athlete who you think would make a great college professor?
I could go a few different ways with this, but let's just, for a second, let's just break down the notion of walking into a classroom. We've all been there. We've had rough weekends, right? You got that Monday 8 a.m. class. You had a little too much to drink maybe on the weekend. Maybe you went to Mooney's and you had a little too much, Mia.
You danced on the boxes too much.
Sure. You walk into class 8 a.m. Monday morning, got the hoodie on because you're trying to cover your face. And Peyton Manning is your professor and interrogating you about what you did this past weekend. Just think about that. Just think about that and how surreal of an environment.
Maybe that's why you'd want Blake Bortles as your professor. I'm just kidding.
Maybe you want
Blake. Maybe that's what people would think.
I think. Let's see here.
I'll go.
Okay, you got one. Go for it.
Second time today. Alexander Emmanuel Rodriguez. How do you spin a narrative and go from absolutely left for dead and turn it around into a lucrative
crisis management?
media, real estate, mogul career where now you are beloved once more? I need to know.
Crisis management with Alex.
Yeah, but then also, I mean, let's also give A-Rod his flowers because the man did start investing at such a young age.
I'm not saying he's not a smart guy.
Right. Well, that's I want to learn about how he started investing so early and was able to turn that into this lucrative real estate company that now he does podcasts about. And then he also used those funds to purchase an NBA team.
I got to go with maybe one that doesn't necessarily come to your head immediately, but I got to go with Bill Walton. Come on now. We all had that one professor in college who was a little bit out there.
Yes, Don Beachler was mine.
And Bill Walton being a college professor.
That wins. I'm not going to say that. you know, Bill is my guy.
Maybe a psychology class with Bill Walton.
No, he would probably teach history of the Grateful Dead and then cycling 101.
Perhaps he could teach either.
He would also teach the history of the world, and it would be everything.
Philosophy with Bill Walton would be a good class.
Philosophy of the world. I'm sure he would have some like intricate name for it too.
I'd be down with that.
I do have one more, and this actually was a real college class, and that is, of course, the late Mike Leach, who taught the strategic warfare class at Washington State, and then I believe he did bring it to Mississippi State as well. People forget Mike Leach had a law degree. He was a historian. Like, he was not just a football coach. And like, that would have been very fascinating. And also, I think he would have had a similar teaching style to Bill Walton.
I took a history of football class in college. Who would you like to see teach a class like that?
Besides Mike Leach?
History of football.
History of football. I mean, probably like Lou Holtz, just because of his voice.
Really?
I'm Lou Holtz.
I ain't going there. I ain't going Lou Holtz. I'd have to go.
I mean, Coach Campo, but I can't say that. So
I feel, you know who would teach a fun history of football class? Rex Ryan would teach a fun history of football.
Yeah, he would.
Class.
That's a good one.
I'd be into the notion of a Rex Ryan.
I feel like Tony Romo would too, since we're on the subject of broadcasters.
Perhaps
he'd have fun with it. I don't know if he'd be that good at it, but he would be engaging as a teacher, like and speaker, which would be good. Or actually, no, I want Berman. I want Berman to teach it. Chris Berman. Yeah, I've met him. He's awesome. We talk every Tom Coughlin J Fun event. We hang out. We do some videos. He's the man.
Interesting.
Back.
Huh. Very fascinating. I'll give you that one. I don't know. I just think it would be pretty cool to have your college professor just be someone that is so.
No, you said Bill Walton, John. We ended the discussion. Like the debate ended when you said Bill Walton.
Well, then let's get to your.
It trumps everything. It's Bill or it's not.
Let's get to your other boy here. That is Aaron Boone. That is his Laz Diaz impression. After we went off the air last week, Aaron Boone got ejected by Laz Diaz, one of the more controversial umpires in all of Major League Baseball, who called, for the record, one of the worst games of the season, if not I think it was statistically the worst called game of the season behind the plate. He impersonated his punch-out motion. And then the Yankees blew a 7-1 lead last night against the Marlins. They are just 2 games above 500, and their streak of 30-plus years without a losing record is very much in jeopardy this year.
Stick with them, John. But stick with them.
Meanwhile, the Mets got outscored 27-3 in a doubleheader against the Atlanta Braves this weekend. There was controversy with an unidentified Mets pitcher who claimed that Justin Verlander was a diva, and for that reason, destroyed chemistry on the pitching staff. Mia, which franchise is more of a doomed disaster?
It's the Yankees.
You say it's the Yankees. Why
it's the Yankees. It's not even close. The Mets accepted when they traded Scherzer, when they dealt all their stars, and said it is going to take us 2 years to rebuild. We're going to collect assets. We're going to collect prospects. We're going from here. They accepted defeat. That's the difference right now, John. The New York Yankees refuse to concede, and they think what they have is okay. And they're going to blame it on injuries, and they're going to say, if we get healthy, we'll figure it out. And the first step to acceptance, the first step, denial, and acceptance are a very fascinating subject that I'm going to butcher that cliche. The reality is, though, is that the New York Yankees refuse to concede. The New York Mets have conceded into madness, and therein lies the difference. And that's why I would rather at least say, we know we're going to be a disaster for the next 2 years and dysfunctional, but we're going to figure it out once we get through these growing pains. I would take that tomorrow. I would rather have a plan of this is what we're going to do as opposed to, well, just stick with us. We're going to get this thing turned. These are the right players. And it's like, no, they weren't the right players last year or the year before. Why would they be now?
Yeah, I mean, it's ignorance, quite frankly. It is ignorance. What do they say? The definition of insanity
is doing the same thing over and over and again and expecting different results.
Yeah. And that's pretty much the situation the Yankees find themselves in. I trace this all back to the quote from Aaron Boone at the end of the 2021 season when he mentioned that the rest of the league caught up to the Yankees. And
what is this, the U.S. women's national team?
Well, and I kept saying to myself, you're a team that hasn't won a World Series or been to a World Series at that point in 12 years, now even longer. The league caught up to you the year afterwards.
Right.
It's pretty much as simple as that. And I understand Aaron Boone sometimes is in a really tough position because, look, for as often questionable as he is in his decision-making, he has to roll with what he's dealt, right? He's got a roster that is given to him, and his job as the manager is to facilitate and to put out the best team possible. Can you say that he has succeeded in that? Arguably, no. But the roster construction stems from the top. There was nothing done at the trade deadline for this team.
Correct.
There was nothing done in the offseason. In the offseason, they outright went and said, we need a left fielder. And to this point, that has not been addressed. I saw something the other day that got me thinking. They were talking about the contract that Carlos Rodon got, 6 years, $161 million. You know who else got that exact contract just a couple of years ago, Mia O'Brien?
Who, John?
Freddie Freeman, who may be the National League MVP this year.
Even though he really wishes he was in Atlanta. Just ask any Braves fan in Jacksonville.
Okay, and maybe he does, but guess what?
It's just so funny. Like, you can't talk about him.
He might propel the Dodgers.
He wishes he was here.
But he might propel the Dodgers to a World Series win this year. And look at the value that they're getting for a player like that. There is a need for a change in organizational structure, organizational philosophy, and there is denial about it. And I tend to agree with you what you say about the Mets. The problem and the difference is, I should say, that there's expected failure with the Mets.
Right, there always is. No, but there wasn't this year. And that's the difference, is that Steve Cohen, and I'm coming right for the Steinbrenners when I say this, Steve Cohen said, we're all in. And then he said, we are all out. We're building for the next 2 years. But at the very least, that crazy dude tweeted about it and was open and transparent with the fans. As crazy as he is, as much money as he just throws at things, he at least has an open conversation. Not doing like my good friend Jim Irsay. I'm just
Well, now there's conversation that Pete Alonso could be on his way out too.
But at least they're having conversations and being transparent about it. Where are the Steinbrenners? Their father is rolling over in his grave right now because they are nowhere to be found. Hal didn't have Derek Jeter's number, John, once upon a time.
Well,
and I go back to that.
Hal's still trying to figure out why the fans are mad.
That's what I mean. If you're that disconnected, then I have no sympathy for you. I compared it to the U.S. women's national team last week. I believe it was last week's program. How like when people are like, oh, how do you feel about the Yankees? I'm like, when their own owners can't figure out why people are upset and they're just trotting poor Aaron Boone out there and Brian Cashman's allowed to just keep on keeping on. Like, their father would never have done that. So why would I care? If their own owners can't figure it out, why should I care?
Well, a guy, Mia, who's not going to be going to the New York Yankees is this man.
Yeah, well, we can dream, John. We can.
Tell us a little about Shohei, what he did this week.
Okay, so Shohei had some arm fatigue, so he's going to skip his next start. But that didn't stop him. Oh, no, that did not stop him, John, from hitting the American League leading 41st homer of the year. The Angels defeated the Astros 2-1 Sunday afternoon at Minute Maid Park. The Angels were a bit of a surprise buyer at the deadline, but they go all in, and now Shohei is also producing in addition to some of their other additions. He's hitting .305, 41 homers, a 9.2 wins above replacement number this year. He's 10-5 on the mound with a 3.17 ERA and 165 strikeouts. Is this the greatest individual season in sports history? Why are we not giving this season and Shohei Ohtani his flowers more? Answer. He plays for the Los Angeles Angels.
Sure. I think this is the greatest season in pro sports history. I really do.
But you'd be hard-pressed to find another one to compare it to.
And you could talk about hockey players having 100 points in a season. You could talk about NBA players averaging 40 points a game. You could talk about prolific quarterbacks breaking touchdown records. No one in the history of American sports has had well-rounded performances in the way that Shohei Ohtani has. No one has done this. And sure, there's a little bit of a variable that maybe you can't necessarily do it like this in other sports, but
you could play both ways in football.
You can play both ways in football.
Dion did it, so.
I think this is, and I don't think it's hyperbole to suggest, Mia, I think it is the greatest season in the modern era of professional sports.
And what's so difficult, John, and obviously I'm very close to the subject being here in Florida, but Jack Caglione, the star hitter for the Florida Gators, who was among the nation's leaders in home runs, who also was a starting pitcher for Florida this past season. He won't be draft eligible till next year. It's already being said, like, oh, is he the next Ohtani? Yeah. Is he the next? It will be very curious to see how many young players.
This has changed it.
Right. So, correct. So how many young players now will try to play both ways and be compared to Shohei Ohtani? But then, unlike in football, you throw in this factor of Tommy John surgery is like a rite of passage for pitchers. Like most of them now these days are having it in college or high school. Some of them, it's before they even get to college. Like it's literally a rite of passage. And so knowing that, and knowing that Shohei obviously has had, he's skipping his next 2 starts or whatever it is because of soreness. Like he has had his injuries, but he still has continued to rake. It is going to be so fascinating to see if anyone can actually touch this / similar to the Steph Curry effect in basketball, if this does change how people view and play the game at the youth level.
You know what's going to officially change it, Mia? When we find out how much money Shohei Ohtani makes this offseason.
Well, where is he going to go, John?
I think he's a Dodger through and through.
Yeah,
I maybe a Giant.
Padres would be fun.
Padres maybe, but then
maybe he is the one superstar they were missing in addition to every other one they collected.
They'd probably have to get rid of Juan Soto at that point, and I don't know if they want to do that. But
all I know is it's that team, as much as the Yankees have disappointed me, as much as Mike Trout and the Angels, I know they're kind of having a resurgence now, but like as much as they have disappointed me, like no team upsets me more than the Padres because obviously they went all in. They bought all these superstars. They traded. They did everything, and they haven't been able to put it together. But San Diego deserves a winner, number one. And number two, like Manny Machado, when he first became the first to go to San Diego, and they told him we're going to buy all these stars, and everyone else said you're nuts, and then obviously it came to fruition. Like Manny Machado doesn't care because either way he gets to go home and live in San Diego and make millions of dollars.
Not a bad life. Pretty beastly life, if you ask me. So I guess we have to talk about the beast of the week, Mia O'Brien. Who did or what did the most beastly thing you've seen in the sports world this week?
I have a very special one, John.
Let's hear it.
You are going to absolutely love. So it was right here on Out of Bounds that I was first introduced to the wonderful game that is known as the Immaculate Grid. Kirk Cousins is the king of the Immaculate Grid football edition.
Okay.
The MinnesotaVikings.com team did an amazing piece on the Vikings quarterback room. I encourage everybody listening to go out there and go read it because it is fantastic. At the end of each night of training camp, and mind you, training camp, you're in the building till 10, 11 o'clock at night. Before they can leave, the three quarterbacks, the quarterbacks coach, the OC, the control guys, even Kevin O'Connell, they all come together. And they all do the Immaculate Grid together. Fun. And because they've all been in the league, they thrive off backup quarterbacks and random offensive linemen.
That's how it
and so be. They strive to have the lowest score of all time. And they actually did the night that the MinnesotaVikings.com staff was there. They had, I think, the most, the highest percentage they had was 2 or 3% on one player. And that is so beastly. And I absolutely love it.
My Immaculate Score grid yesterday with baseball was 7.
Well, listen, John. You may be my beast of the week then next week.
7. I got 7. There were 9 spots for the record, and I had a 7. And I saw someone even tweet at me. They beat that too. There was 3.5. I was like, what? I had Randy Velarde on my board yesterday with 0.0009%. He had.
How many games did he play in the majors?
Oh, and Randy Velarde was in the majors a long time. He played for the Yankees twice, but I guessed on it was 300 Angels hitter, and I knew he had a good season for the Angels. He only played for the Angels for a year or two. I didn't know if he had 300. I admit it was a total guess, but I got it. And I was like, yeah. But my beast of the week is Matt Olson. We talked about Freddie Freeman before. Matt Olson hit his 42nd home run of the season here, August 14th. He's probably going to reach 50 this year. Sets a new Braves record for left-handed hitters. And he's a beast because, Mia, this guy came in and was given the entire farm by the Braves to replace Freddie Freeman. They felt that Freddie Freeman was too expensive. They felt that Matt Olson was a cheaper version of him that they could sign long-term. And guess what? They were right. They hit the jackpot because this guy has been exceptional this season. His average is up from last year. His power has come out. He's going to be a major, major, major long-term player in this league for a long time to come. I think that Matt Olson has to be my beast of the week.
I think outside of the Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs trade, which at the moment no one knew in the moment, I don't know if there was a better trade in recent sports history than Freddie Freeman, Matt Olson, which wasn't a trade. Obviously, it was trading for Matt Olson, letting Freddie Freeman walk. I'm not sure we've seen something that has worked out for both sides quite as well as that one has. Yeah. So I very much agree with that. Although I do prefer the Immaculate Grid answer.
I feel that. This has been Out of Bounds. We're back with you next Monday right here on Know Your News. We will see you next time.